Okay, so today I want to do a video of everything I did step by step to move into my car. Now, of course, my situation may be totally different from your situation. So for me, I was moving from one state to another in the United States of America. And so a lot of this is going to have to do with moving. Now, you may be staying in the same city that you already live in. So just keep that in mind as I start to talk about what it is I did. And I know, number one, like I said, I moved from Arizona to Washington State. This is because I had a job offer there. So, of course, people are going to ask, what about savings? What about work? So, if you're someone who happens to plan to do something like what I did, like move to another state, of course, it makes sense to move for a job. If you don't have a job, you might want to, pick up your life and move it somewhere else and then start looking for a job once you get there. And that sometimes makes the best sense because then you're there in person to do job interviews. So, of course, people are going to ask, how did you afford to do that? So many people would have savings to do that. And to be honest, when I moved, I did not have any savings. I was in a situation where you could definitely say I was living paycheck to paycheck. So in this case, I had a job, which I was getting a paycheck from, and I was going to start a new job somewhere else in a new state and get a paycheck there once I started working that job. So like I said, I had no savings whatsoever. And what ended up happening is when I left my job, the one in Arizona, they didn't pay me my final paycheck. They said they were going to have to mail it to me. And so even then, I was like, whatever money I had, that's what I moved with to pay for gas and all that to move. Of course, I didn't have an address yet in the new city that I was going to be moving to. So I used the address of my new job in order for me to just receive mail there. Until I could actually get a P.O. box once I moved to Seattle, Washington. Now, you may have seen videos of my car before. It's a very small car, but I basically moved everything that I owned in that tiny little car, which means for the most part, I had to get rid of many things that I owned before I even moved. And so my advice would be, of course, to get rid of your stuff, sell your stuff if you can, because then that's another way to make money. Donate your stuff to a charity. If, depending on your situation, you might want to put your stuff in storage or leave some of your stuff with family. Maybe give away some of your stuff to friends if they'll hold it for you, if they have a garage or something. But this is really only if you plan to come back and get that stuff at some point in time. For me, I just tried to get rid of everything I owned. That included, like, I had a mattress, a bed frame, a bicycle. These were all things that weren't going to fit in my car. So I knew that once I moved to my new place, I would have to rebuy all those items. Now, before you hit the road, you're going to want to make sure your car is in tip-top condition. So you want to make sure maybe you get brand new tires or an oil change, maybe sign up for a AAA service. I know on my car I have jumper cables and I also have an air pump in case I get a flat tire. So a lot of what I've talked about so far really had to do with leaving where I lived. So of course, like I said, I was going to be moving, so I put in my notice, let them know I was quitting. Where I lived at, give them my notice that I'm going to be moving out. Your situation may be that you're getting evicted. I don't know. But the point is, I got rid of my stuff, got closure with all my places where, like, say I had a deposit on something, like sometimes when you set up your electric bill, sometimes they have you leave a deposit. So basically getting those deposits back after I had completed my lease and moved out. So basically that's more money that you'll have in your pocket. And then of course came the move. Like I said, you may be in your own city and not be doing any of this moving. For me, I had to move. So basically I loaded up all my stuff in my car. I drove from Arizona to California to Oregon to Washington to where I moved. I moved to Seattle, Washington. And my point is, along the way, because my car was so full of stuff, I couldn't just sleep in my car on the way. So I did stay at hotels along the way while I was driving. And of course, sometimes you might have a concern that if all your stuff's in your car, you don't want your stuff to get stolen, right? So just being mindful of that. It took me several days to move from one state to another. Like I said, once I got to the new place, I was able to receive my mail there to get that other paycheck that I was waiting for. So that was additional money. And then of course, Once I was there, I was able to set up a P.O. box in person. Now, the options there are, of course, you can get a P.O. box at the local post office, or you could set up a mailbox service at maybe like a UPS store. And there's other like mom and pop type mailbox service places that you could look into to receive your mail. So I felt like I wanted to wait until I actually got to Seattle to set up a mailbox, because once I was there, obviously, I'm there to set up residency. So I'm there, I get a mailbox. I also from there could have gotten my ID changed over from Arizona to Washington. What I did eventually do is get my driver's license, transferred over from Arizona to Washington. I didn't do that right away, but that is probably something you'll want to do right in the beginning if you are moving to be somewhere permanent. And the other thing is I had all my stuff in my car, right? So for me, my choice was to put all my stuff into a storage unit, which I couldn't really set up that storage unit until I got to Seattle. So once I moved up to Seattle, then I found a storage unit place and then moved everything that was in my car into the storage unit. That left my car totally open for me to just be able to actually sleep in the back seat area. I have a car with a hatchback, the seats fold down, so it's like a completely flat surface where I could just put a mattress and sleep back there. Actually, let me quickly talk about converting the car so that I could sleep in the back end, because at that point I obviously didn't have like a mattress or anything like that. I believe I probably saved some of my pillows and blankets when I moved, but what I had to do at that point was go and buy a mattress pad to put in the back of my vehicle. Now, there are various places where you could buy that if you buy it online, where if you happen to have an IKEA in your area, you can get a really cheap mattress pad there. Also, up here in Washington, we have Fred Meyer grocery stores, which actually have like a home goods section, and they do sell bedding. And I noticed they had some foam pads there for sale. So there's various places where you could purchase something like that. So that was one thing I had to do. Plus, when I moved into my car, it was summertime. So really all I needed was kind of like a mattress pad and then like blankets, pillows. But what happened is it started to get colder because I continued living in my car well into the winter time. And so that is when I went to a Big 5 Sporting Goods, which they have here in Washington. And I bought what people will refer to as a 0-degree sleeping bag. So that's supposed to be like a sleeping bag that keeps you warm if it's 0 degrees. I bought that just to have like an extra layer of warmth in my car. Now, I do have a couple of videos that I can post below that are basically kind of like a how-to video of how I set up the back of my car. I show how I fold down the seats and how everything lays flat, and then you can put a mattress back there. And then I also have a video where I show how I block out the windows so that if someone was outside, they can't see in, as well as putting up a curtain right here behind the seats. And then that way, when someone looks in from the front of the car, they're going to see the regular seats like it looks like everything's fine, but then it's kind of like dark back here because I used a black curtain that kind of blocks out the back so you can't see what's going on back there. So if I was laying down back there and taking a nap, then no one would be able to see back there behind the curtain. Okay, and so one of the next steps that I did once I got to Seattle was to look for a gym. And I'm sure there's a variety of gyms you can choose from. The one I chose was 24 Hour Fitness. At the time, I chose that one because they're open 24 hours and I felt like I could go there any time of day. Also, the membership that I had, you could go to any location that they have. They have more than one location in the Seattle area. So I thought that would be helpful for me to get a 24 Hour Fitness membership, and I've been told that's a little more pricey than some of the other ones that are out there, but that's the one that I chose. And so the reason I got the gym membership wasn't because I wanted to work out and get buff. I got it so I could use their showers. Also, they have indoor pools, and I was really interested in swimming, but of course there's showers available. There's lockers there to keep your stuff while you're showering. And then not only that, one thing that I noticed 24 Hour Fitness has, like when you walk in, they hand you a towel. So I didn't have to like bring my own towel. They have clean towels that they wash. So I used their towels after I took a shower or after I went swimming. It's like obviously unlimited towels, however many you need. And then also when you're in the shower, they have dispensers of where there's like shampoo, soap, conditioner, all of that. So then I wasn't buying those products unless, you have special needs that you want to use a certain kind of soap or shampoo.
but I just used what they had, so that saved me money on buying those kind of products. So I was happy with using that gym.
Okay, so that seems pretty simplified so far. So basically, I had my bed all set up in my car, so I had somewhere to sleep at night. I pretty much kept all my stuff in storage. I went to work every day. I had a place to shower at the gym. I had somewhere to get my mail. And so pretty much all the basics of life were covered. All I really needed to do was continue working, which my plan of course was to work and save up money so I could actually get a deposit, move into an apartment. But that ended up taking several more months than I had planned on. And basically just finding things to entertain myself. I could go and get food either at a fast food place, a restaurant, a grocery store. Didn't really keep too much food in my car, but I'll probably do a video about what I did to eat every single day when I was living in my car. Probably was not the healthiest of diets, but I do want to talk about it and what some other options might be. And also, like I said, just finding a way to entertain myself because I had moved into a brand new city. So that meant everything was brand new to me. So just exploring the city was something to do to kill time. But also sometimes I could go to a public library. That way I could use internet, Wi-Fi, just things like that. Finding somewhere to go so that I wasn't just, I guess, sitting in my car all day long because I did work. So technically I wasn't just having to sit in my car all day long. I did go to work. But then, of course, when I was off work, just finding somewhere to go sit for a while, I would go to local public parks. Luckily, Seattle does have a lot of parks and places that you can walk and hike and enjoy the outdoors. And so I did that. I took that to my advantage and just kind of walked around the city, got a lot of exercise. All in all, I feel like it really comes down to where you need to lay your head at night and find a place to sleep. And so I would just sleep in my car. Other than that, I lived a pretty normal life. I guess the last issue to address is, as far as did I consider myself homeless? Because I did technically have places to sleep during the time that I lived in my car. I do want to talk about some of those things because if you've watched some of my other videos, I do videos about jobs that offer housing. So there are a couple of jobs I did take. A lot of these were in hotels, and so they did offer housing. They usually offered some sort of hotel room to sleep in while I was working. That was one scenario. Of course, if you have friends, family, maybe if you're dating someone, it's not uncommon to spend the night at someone's house. So it's like to use the term homeless seems a little weird because I feel like I did sleep some places sometime. Even sometimes I would get a hotel room if I had saved up some money and just, I guess in a sense, we use the phrase treat yourself, splurge, have somewhere to go for the evening. It's just a nice way to relax and get out of the car, but also say you had a project you needed to work on, you need a little more space than what you can do inside a vehicle. So I would sometimes get hotel rooms. Now, in my case, I did work for hotels, so I could usually get a discounted hotel room. But you may look into like an Airbnb or something that's a little more affordable than staying in a expensive hotel.
Okay, I'd like to wrap up this video by just mentioning a couple more things about living in a car. Number one, you might need to change your cell phone service plan. Now, I remember that was an issue that I had when I moved. Maybe it doesn't affect you. But one thing to keep in mind is a lot of times, like I have an iPhone, so a lot of times I can do a lot of things connect to Wi-Fi. But when you're in your car, like driving around, there isn't really Wi-Fi to connect to. So you might find yourself using a lot more minutes than you used to. Another thing, let me give my list here that I'm gonna go through. Doing laundry, of course, so that seems like a no-brainer. You just find a laundromat and do your laundry at the laundromat so you can have clean clothes. But I mentioned this because I've noticed a lot of laundromats will also have Wi-Fi signal. So while you're there waiting for your clothes to get clean, you can also use the internet and do anything that you might need to do that you can't do while you're in a car. Okay, next. Now, you're probably gonna see a lot of videos where people have these charging devices in their car, like a battery pack generator, something like that. I never used anything like that because really the only devices I use are like my cell phone, which I can charge in my car while I'm driving, or I can charge it while I'm at work. When I mentioned like trying to entertain myself while I lived in a car, a lot of times I would just have my phone and I could just go online, look at things on Instagram, watch YouTube videos, that sort of thing. And so a lot of times I'm just sitting in my car watching YouTube videos. That is, of course, using up data. It's using up power. And so sometimes you kind of have to be mindful of that. Okay, so a few more things I'm going to add for my list is to always keep some extra toilet paper in your car. So when I talked before about using showers at the gym, you might also want to get a pair of like plastic flip-flops. So you have like shower shoes for when you're using those public showers. So I would always keep a spare bag of extra clothes. So we're talking like some extra underwear, extra socks, you know, extra clothes to change into, a jacket, maybe some spare shoes. Some other things you might want to keep with you, such as like a first aid kit, Band-Aids, aspirin, chapstick, you know, anything like that that's just like lotions, like if you have bug spray or if you happen to get bit by a bunch of bugs, maybe there's some sort of like soothing lotion that you can use for that. These are all things that I would just always keep with me. But of course, like I said, I had the storage unit, so I could always put stuff in storage. But there's some stuff that you might want to just keep on hand in case you can't get to the storage unit. Or, you know, sometimes storage units aren't open 24 hours a day. So if it's overnight and you really need something, it's best to just have it with you in your car. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to make it as quick as possible so you didn't have to sit through a whole, 30-minute, hour-long video to just go over these real quick topics. So if you want to hear about anything else, leave a comment and I will get back to you.